Hello and welcome to the AI Fabric series. In this series, we are going to discuss about various concepts that surround AI Fabric and also see how to set up and use AI Fabric in UiPath. And as far as this video is concerned, it's more about the concepts of AI Fabric. So even if you're an RPA developer, I would recommend that you go through this video because this would really clarify the different concepts that surround AI Fabric. And in that context, the very first question that we need to ask ourselves is why do we even need intelligent robots? And the very obvious answer to this question is that the RPA robots are really good at following rules, but they're not as good at making decisions. And if we have a look at all of these tasks, for example, property valuation or email routing, they all have something common in them. They are all tasks which we do on a regular basis, but at the same time, there is also some kind of intelligence that is needed to automate this task. So for example, in case of resume matching, the resumes are so different from each other, so it's not easy to define a rule which can actually classify resumes on the basis of the text in it. And there are basically three things that make these tasks really difficult to automate. All of these tasks are highly uncertain, they have a lot of variability, and also the data that you have is unstructured. And in all such cases, you need to make your robot intelligent so that he's able to handle such situations. But in order to make your robot intelligent, we need to first understand that how do we as humans make these decisions. So if you think of property valuation, a broker is able to value property depending on his experience. And all this experience was based on certain data that he has been evaluating day in and day out. And now in order to make a robot make this decision, you need to feed him some data. And you need to build a model out of this data. So let's just consider in case of property valuation, one input that you might need is the size of the property, also the location, the number of floors or the number of rooms. And with this data, you would be able to estimate a price that you want to pay for this particular property. The type of machine learning that you would be using in this case is called supervised learning, and it is based on regression. It is called supervised learning because the inputs and the outputs that you provide to the model are already known. So you already give them the size, the location and floor and the number of rooms, and you also give them the price for this particular data set. And also, since the value of a property is continuous in nature, we'll be using regression in such cases. But it would be different if we consider email routing. So in case of email routing, the output that you get is some kind of classification. And you try to classify your email into some kind of a category. It could happen that some emails are related to jobs and some are related to marketing. And in order to classify these emails into some kind of category, the kind of inputs that you need is the email body or the content of the email and also the metadata surrounding that email. It could be the email ID of the sender or the subject also. So whenever out of a machine learning model, you get some kind of a category as an output, then such kind of ML models are known as classification models. Let's just consider another example, like for example, resume matching. In case of resume matching, you get a bunch of resumes and you want to as well classify them into different groups. But it could happen that you don't already have these groups defined. So what you can do is you can give the model all the inputs. In this case, it's all the resumes. And depending on the content of the resume, the model would divide them into different groups. So if you think of the inputs here, it's nothing but all the text in the resume, and the output is you get some kind of categorization of the resume. And since we're not telling the model what this group is known as, this is known as unsupervised learning. Well, unsupervised learning is something that you would have already seen in your day-to-day life. So if you're using Facebook, for example, and whenever Facebook asks you to tag yourself in one photo, and then he's able to tag all the other photos in which you exist. So what Facebook does is it categorizes you into some kind of a group. And the moment you give name to any one of the elements of this group, you're actually naming all the elements of the group. And this is why whenever you tag yourself in one photo, you get tagged in all the other photos of Facebook. So I hope now it's clear how different kind of models work and what are the kind of inputs that might be needed. There is also a third category which is called reinforcement learning. And in case of reinforcement learning, you try to penalize the model every time it makes a mistake. And in order to reduce this penalty, it tries to make less mistakes. One example of reinforcement learning is DeepMind's AlphaGo bot, which defeated the world champion at the game of AlphaGo. So now that we understand different kinds of machine learning models, and the kind of input that's needed in order to train them, let's just have a deeper look into how these inputs are being made and how a model is being trained. So for that, I would take property valuation as an example, and I would consider that size is the only parameter that is needed in order to predict the price of that particular property. So for that, I have some random data here, wherein the first column is nothing but the size in terms of square feet, and the second column is the price. Since the size is the input, I have taken it as X and price as Y. And now we'll see how to use this data in order to make a machine learning model. And the very first step that is being done is you need to split the data into training and test. And the reason we want to split this data into training and test is because after training a model, you want to be sure that the trained model will give you an accurate result. And for that reason, you would be using the test data set to compare the actual price with the price predicted by the model. And if the error between the prediction and the actual price is not so high, then you can be sure that you could use this model also for unknown data. Also, one input here in terms of AI Fabric. In AI Fabric, this test data set is also known as the evaluation data set. So just don't get confused, test is something which is same as evaluation. So let's move forward and try and understand how this training data would be used in order to build a model. So here we have a training data which is being fed into some kind of a package. This could be a bunch of libraries from Python. And with the help of these packages, you're trying to make a model. And this model in our case would be some kind of a regression model, which would be based on this training data. And then with the help of this model, you're trying to make predictions, which is nothing but Y dash. So Y dash is the prediction that is coming out of the model, whereas Y is the actual price. So let's just say, for example, 2000 is the input, which is X1, and Y is the actual price, whereas Y dash is the prediction out of the model. So now in order to see how good a model performs, what we can do is we can compare this predicted value with the actual price. And depending on the error between the prediction and the actual value, you can further improve this model by changing the value of the coefficients, which are M and C in our case. So just to get a better understanding, let's just assume that I'm plotting all the sizes and the prices of different properties on an X and Y plane, wherein on the X axis, I have all the sizes in square feet, and on the Y axis, I have all the prices. So if you see here, this blue line is nothing but a model, which is Y1. And all these red lines or this distance is nothing but the error that is there for each data point. Now, in order to improve this model, what I can do is I can move this line somewhere in between here so that the total sum of the distance would be further reduced. And reducing this distance is nothing but reducing the error. And in order to optimize any machine learning model, we are always trying to reduce this particular error. Let's just say that I have moved this blue line. And if you compare with the previous graph, the distance is comparatively less, and it's a better model as compared to the previous graph. And with this loop, you're doing nothing but you're just making a comparison between the actual and the prediction. And depending on this loss, you're just trying to make changes to the coefficients, which in our case is M and C. In this case, it's not possible to make this error as 0 because there is no straight line passing through all of these points. And that is why we'll have to find a point where we have the least error. And once this point is reached, we would say that the model is optimized. Well, this is all about model optimization. But what you also see here is there is a certain kind of pipeline that has been built. So you have the training data, which is being fed into some kind of Python package. And this Python package is then comparing the prediction with the actual price and then trying to update this particular model. But this is not the only thing that is part of the pipeline. There are also other things that you need to do to the training data before you can start with training. In our case, it was simple because we had just one input and one output. But let's just consider we have another output, which is location. And location here is nothing but some kind of text. And in order to train a machine learning model, you would have to convert this location into something that is quantifiable. And in order to convert this thing into something quantifiable, and one such parameter could be the rate of the land in that particular location. So for example, the rate of land in Mumbai is completely different than what you have in Bangalore or in Munich or Berlin. And instead of using location as a parameter, we could use land rate. And if you see here, I've taken land rate as x2. And in order to convert location into land rate, there is some kind of pre-processing that needs to be done. And this pre-processing would also be part of the pipeline. And apart from this pre-processing, you might also have to clean the data. For example, it could happen that you have thousands of data points, and at some data points you have some missing land rates or some missing square feet sizes. And in such cases, maybe you want to remove these data points. And this would be part of data cleaning. All the pre-processing that needs to be done in order to train the model is part of the pipeline. And pipeline is nothing but a bunch of code which is being deployed at different steps. And each step is trying to process data and give it out to the next step. So now that we understand data sets and machine learning models and pipelines, so now let's just try and summarize everything and see how all of these concepts fit inside AI Fabric. In order to understand AI Fabric's infrastructure, we need to also understand different kind of roles which are involved. And UiPath defines 3 personas which are mainly responsible for working of AI Fabric. The very first for sure is the data scientist, which we already saw. He is the one who is responsible for training a model and then adding it to the AI Fabric. So he's the one who is defining the ML packages, also defining the pipelines, and then adding it to the AI Fabric. So once the ML package has been added and the pipeline has been created, the next step is that this package needs to be deployed as an ML skill in the orchestrator. And this deployment is done by the process controller. So he takes the package defined by the data scientist and deploys it in the AI Fabric. And this deployment also adds this package as an ML skill in the orchestrator. So now since this ML skill is available in the orchestrator, an RPA developer can use these skills directly in his UiPath Studio. And this ML skill is similar to any other activity which could be dragged and dropped from the activity panel into the workflow. What you see here is enough to make your robot intelligent in order to make decisions depending on the ML skills. But then there could be also scenarios where the confidence score of the prediction is not as good as it's supposed to be. And you could set up a threshold for this confidence score. And whenever the score is less than the threshold, then you can involve a validation station wherein instead of using the prediction from the ML model, you're asking the user to make the prediction. And once the user helps the robot to take a decision, this decision from the user can be used as a new training data point and could be added to the training data. And it would then be the responsibility of the data scientist to retrain the model and add a new package for the process controller to redeploy it in the AI Fabric. So this is how you're actually closing the loop by involving the business user's inputs and retraining the model every time your robot is not able to make decision, so that in future when such a scenario comes up again, he would not be dependent on the user this time. So all the personas that you see here are something that can be defined in the orchestrator as different roles, and then you can also assign these roles to respective users. Well, that's all as far as the concepts surrounding AI Fabric are concerned. So before I end this video, let's do a small recap. So at first we discussed why we needed intelligent robots, and it is mainly pertaining to high variability, uncertainty, and the amount of unstructured data that a robot may have to handle in order to make certain decisions. And thereafter we saw different types of machine learning models along with the examples, namely the supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. Thereafter we clarified different concepts pertaining to AI Fabric, namely datasets, ML packages, and then pipelines. Thereafter we saw a complete infrastructure of how AI Fabric works and also different roles and people involved in order to make this happen. So that's all for this video, and I hope this video was helpful for you. And in the next video, we'll go into UiPath Cloud Platform and see how to set up AI Fabric, assign roles or personas to different users in Orchestrator, and also see how to use AI Fabric as a whole. So stay tuned and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Till then, keep automating.